finally awake. I know your ears are still sensitive after all that. Exactly. I'll tell you what happened. Let me go ahead and listen to your heart and lungs, okay? I need to do some checks here. You're not quite out of the woods yet, my dear. Alright. Shh, yeah. No, you're right. That's all over. That's all over. You're in the hospital. They're very big, comfortable rooms, but yes, you're in the hospital. Yes, this is real. Well, you know me, right? That's right, exactly. Yep, so I'm your... Whoa, you... Slow down. Try to take a deep breath in. Come on now, deep breath. Yeah, I'm gonna grab your hand real quick, just for a second. So you can feel, yeah, that's right. Exactly, deep breath in. And out. Yep, it's all over now. I have a little bit more work to do to take care of you, though, okay? Yep. You remember this? As always, my license number is down in the description below. I am a real physician, but because we're meeting here in this world between worlds, which we call the internet, and we want to keep everything a secret, I'm whispering. And nothing that I say can be used as official medical treatment for any kind of, to diagnose or treat any kind of disease, okay? This is all self-care because of where we're meeting. Of course, because you and I have never met, right? And therefore, I can't give you any individualized care, exactly. Yep, same old me, same old disclaimer, even after everything you've been through. Yeah. Can I go ahead and check you out real quick? I need to do a few more checks, okay? Alright. Go ahead and take a deep breath. Just focus on being here in the present. You aren't there anymore. Deep breath in. Alright. And then just breathe normally here. I'm just going to listen to your heart in the 4 spots, okay? Exactly, just like I showed you. And over here. Beautiful, okay. And then here in the back, I'm going to have you take a deep breath, okay? I'm just going to listen to your lungs, just like I've showed you before. Nice, okay. And here. Alright, you still have some pretty weird little crackles here in the back of your lungs. Not really crackles. Actually, to tell you the truth, I would actually call them bronchi. Hold on. Little thing there on your face. There you go. Those are the kind of snory, wet sounds you get when you have pneumonia. A little bit still on this side. Why do I say still? Well, you've been out for a couple days. Yep. Well, so you had a massive infection coming back, right? So we put you on a bunch of, like, crazy high-dose antibiotics that I wouldn't usually use. A couple of anti-parasites as well. Yeah, little thing on your head, my dear. Right there. There we go. Well, normally you wouldn't see that except in someone who's immunocompromised, but because of where you went with the bioweapons and everything else like that. Exactly. Yep, so it's a pretty severe infection. The problem and the reason you don't remember anything is because you then had some cardiac issues. I'm taking care of those. I can go in a little more detail. That's what I'm really focused on. So I'm really happy your heart sounds pretty good today. We're gonna get another EKG on you. Yeah, actually, so if you'll just let me, I'm gonna put some of these little stickies on your chest, okay? Is that okay? Okay. There you go. So let's go ahead and adjust this here on the bed a little bit. And then this over here. That's fine. I can explain to you while you put them on yourself. Okay, that is okay. Well, I'd like to do it fairly quickly. It's not an emergency, so I'm not going to force your hand, but I do need another EKG today. I do. Yes, I do. I promise the EKG won't hurt you. We've been taking them the whole time that you've been asleep. I know it must have been pretty rough. Here, I'll show you a little book. So this is actually my mother-in-law's old book, but it's really good. It still works. Rapid Interpretation of EKG's book. You see the cover is all off. This guy is not a good guy, but his book on EKGs have helped a lot of people. Well, it just goes to show. I mean, you know that a lot of what we know about certain inflammatory diseases we know because of the Nazis and some of the horrible things they did. Yeah. Life is complicated. We are all completely, totally depraved with shining lights of goodness within us. You're right. I know, especially after where you've been, everything's kind of a philosophical quandary now. It's okay. Okay. Okay, let me show you. Alright, so these leads that I need to show you. So there's basically 12 leads I need to put on you, okay? These all go on your limbs, or maybe not exactly on your limbs, but like on the entrance to your limbs, okay, on your torso. And these all go across your chest, okay? Yep. So these leads, so we have limb leads that form a triangle. You can see here. Okay, electrodes are placed on the right and left arms and left leg to form a triangle. Originally, historically, people used just these 3 spots for the electrode sensors. Yeah, I'll look. It's okay. No, the wound in your back actually has been healing really well. Yeah, it's interesting that you remember that. You're absolutely right. Okay. So, this lead we're going to put for your right arm, we're actually going to put it here. This other lead for your left arm, we're going to put here. Okay? The remaining 2 ones are foot leads, right? And we will be putting them here and here. Okay? Sorry, I'm trying to find exactly what to show you. Oh, what's the plus and minus? Well, the right arm lead uses the right arm basically as a positive, and all other sensors are channeled into a common ground, and the ground is considered, negative. And so, same thing with 3 other leads 1, 2, and 3. Okay, you're gonna be okay with that. Yep, it's just stickies. It's nothing bad or evil. I know you've been through a lot, so I want to explain everything in detail. The other electrodes we're going to put on are these. Okay, 6 chest leads. 1 on this side of your heart, okay, and then the others here. They all look at your heart like from different angles, right? Because your heart actually is kind of lying down here. And so they help me see which side of your chest a problem could be in. I can show you. Here's a good picture. This is a really good picture, see? Okay, so you see V1 looks kind of at the atrium here. V2 kind of through here, this ventricle right there. Right? This is going to be, so this is going to be your left atrium and left ventricle. This is going to be right atrium and right ventricle. I know even though it's lying like that, this is more towards your left side. Yep. And that's how it's going to look at it. So can I go ahead and put those on you? Okay, I will show you exactly what it means. There won't be any secrets. No scary secrets, I promise. immediate phase is going to relax over time. I think what I want to do is get you some hydroxyzine, because I think you might have a little bit of jitteriness and trouble sleeping over the next couple days, but I want to actually taper off some of the harder medication we have you on. The reason is because of what we found on your last EKG. Yep. Let me go ahead and get these stickies on you, and then I'll explain that. Okay. Alright. Here. I'm just gonna get this here. Up here, kind of on your shoulder. Top of your chest, over here. This. Okay. And then over here. Here. This side. This. Okay. Here. And then this over here. Down here, just the bottom side of your torso, just above your pants right here. Okay. This. Alright. And this one right here. Here. And here. Well, yeah, the EKG machines nowadays, they come with, you see the little sticker. Yeah, it tells you, see there's a little dude on it. It tells you exactly where to put it. Exactly. And sticky here. Sticky here. This one makes a little bit of funny sound. And sticky here. And here. Perfect. See, that wasn't so bad. Okay. The machine's gonna read it out. You just don't talk for a second. Just relax. Nice deep breaths in and out. Yeah, he can show you what they look like. That's not a problem. So, while that's reading, I'll tell you some stuff. So, there should be a little, I'll read this to you a little bit. I want to show you a picture of a normal sinus rhythm. Just kind of what it looks like. There's so much here on how your heart beats. Okay. Here you go. So this is a pretty normal rate. Okay. So a normal heartbeat has a P wave, a QRS wave, and a T wave. Now this is normal specifically in like lead 2. Like the leads where it's sticking straight up. Let me show you, depending on which angle. So each different lead is looking at the heart at a different angle. I can show that to you too, because there's a simpler way to explain it. There is, yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a little camera picture in here that I can show you. I know. You're totally right. Definitely, that's not my goal. Try not to talk while the thing is reading. Let me restart it again. Here. Okay, there we go. I can't find the picture that I'm looking for, but basically it's a picture of a heart with a bunch of cameras looking at it. So based on which way the electricity in your heart is going, we can see, it kind of tells us which electrical cells are doing okay, which ones are hurt, and so forth. Because the electricity, as it flows towards some of the different leads. So if it flows towards a lead, that lead is going to read it as a spike. So like if it's flowing towards your arm, right? Your arm lead will read a spike up as electricity goes down towards it. Exactly, and the spike down is as the electricity is going away, right? So that's why it depends. This is normal in some of the leads. Some of the leads, actually, it's normal for it to be more upside down, because they're the ones like looking more up here, and as your heart beats, the electricity flows from the middle point and then down out, and then it repolarizes. So as it flows down, the electricity comes down like this. If your heart is lying like here, these are the two atrium, these are the ventricles. The electricity starts up in the SA node, goes down the middle, and then out. like that. It's a beautiful little flower. Flower of electricity. It's a beautiful little flow. So as it flows, it's going to be flowing away from these leads during the QRS. So it's going to go, that would be a big down. Yeah, exactly. And that changes. So that's why on the chest leads, which are the ones here along your chest down there, we look for something called our way of progression. We want to see these leads that start off really tall get more and more negative as we go, because they start off tall because that's the electricity is starting there, and then yeah, exactly, and then as the electricity is flowing away from them, it's more and more negative. Yeah. Well, yeah. So when we look at the heart, we always, like when we look at the EKGs specifically, it's good to look at it the same way every single time. Yep. This is my checklist when I look at but you just remember it. Before this checklist, I put P waves. I always look at the P waves first, see if any of them are missing, and then rate rhythm, axis, hypertrophy, or infarction, right? I don't think about hypertrophy and infarction like that. I think about it as, so like I do the P waves, then rate rhythm, axis, and then I'm looking for morphology is usually how I think about it, and put those two kind of together. And I put infarction way before hypertrophy. I'm looking first to see if I'm seeing any ST. Yeah, it's called an ST elevation. That's what I'm looking for with a heart attack. That's what I'm looking for to see if these little P's here. Sorry, I'm pointing at it wrong. The point between this spiky thing and this round thing, I'm trying to see if that goes up. This flat line, if it's up. Yeah, so you can actually look at the rate without the machine telling you, because you just count the lines, you just memorize. So you say, start here, and you say 300, 150, 100, 300, 150, 100, and then you go 75, 60, 50. You can tell this rate is between 100 and 75, probably a little closer to the 100. Yeah, so maybe, let's see if here is about 85, maybe about 90. Yeah, exactly. So, I'm going to take these leads off you now. I got the measurements I needed. Thank you for being so quiet. I know that's not something you normally hear. Be quiet while I take your heart's electricities. It's okay. Alright, so I'm going to take these off of you, okay? It's looking a lot better, but you still have something. Hold on here. Okay. I'm glad you're awake. It means I can ask you some questions now. Little thing on your forehead, my dear. Poor dear. Here, you got a little bit of sweat there. I know. Yeah. So, you have a little something called QT prolongation, okay? I think that it's likely because of the medications we have you on. Okay? I'll show you what that means. On this thing, the P wave comes first, is the little bump that was here. So from here, all the way to the end here is what I was saying. Yeah, that's the QT wave, or the QT. That I'm worried about being prolonged. Basically, what is happening is the electricity is taking a little bit longer to travel through your whole heart than I'd like. That's probably why you still feel kind of dizzy and anxious and a little weird. So, exactly. So this EKG is the same as the previous EKG that you had. You're stable. The vital machines that are monitoring you are still finding you to be stable. But I want to kind of watch that, because a QT prolongation can progress progress to a fatal arrhythmia called torsade de pointes, which looks like this. I might have a picture, since you want pictures so bad. Yep. Well, I'm answering all your questions because it's not an immediate emergency right now. I've already discontinued some of your medications, but and it's already getting a little better than what I wanted, or than it's getting a little better. Your QT wave was a lot longer while you were asleep, so I'm happy with that. I'm happy things are getting better. Nevertheless, I wouldn't normally answer this many questions, but I'll show you just because of where you've come back from. I know that these first couple days of anxiety are going to be pretty rough. Yeah. I'm trying to find a good picture. Oh, you like the sounds? That's fine, I can put them near you. I know there's a picture of a good torsade de pointes here. There should be a really digitalis toxicity, a bunch of other things. Torsade de pointes, 11 OPQRST. Why do they call it something else here? It's a certain kind of ventricular fibrillation, so maybe there's a section here on ventricular fibrillation. A, B, C, D, E, F. Arrhythmias. Rapid rhythms, tachycardia, wandering pacemaker. It's not any of these. I will find you a picture since you wanted to see a picture. I think maybe 123. Page 123. Some ventricular fibrillations here. So these are all kinds of ventricular fibrillation here. That's not what your pattern is supposed to look like. Totally crazy looking. I wonder if there's a good there's a ventricular flutter. It's kind of regular, and that's a ventricular fibrillation. They should have a picture. It's such a famous... Alright, maybe this isn't the best EKG book in the world. I'm surprised they don't have that. But basically it looks like a dance. It's like... But they're all like, fibrillating, but not quite. It's very special. So, yeah, how do we know when it's prolonged? Well, you're right, there is a formula. I can write it down for you if you want. I can, or I could just show it to you here. So this is the Pocket Medicine Sabatine. It's a slightly older edition, about 2 or 3 years old, but this has not changed for years. So, QT, this is the formula. So, the reason that we change how we calculate your QT instead of just counting the little boxes is because when your heart rate changes, the accuracy of that changes, right? So there's a adjusted QT. It's the Bazette formula that you're talking about. It's good you've been doing your homework. So QTC is the QT divided by the square root of RR, which is in seconds, okay? And that it overcorrects at high heart rates, it undercorrects at low heart rates. So this formula is better for really high or really low heart rates. And that's QTC equals QT divided by the cubed root of RR. But generally normal is less than 440 in, you can see, you're allowed to see, less than 440 or less less than 460, depending on your sex. Exactly. Exactly. I hope that satisfied some of your questions and curiosity. Yeah. So, can I tell you what's going on with you now? Specifically. Alright. And then I'd like to listen a little more to your lungs, because there was something else I wanted to check on your lungs. I just wanted to listen to your heart and get those EKGs first. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I can show you. So I actually have a list here of some of the medications that we've had you on, and I can talk to you about why, what's going on. So, I know a lot of pages because it's a long list. So basically, because of where you came back from. So there's a couple things that can cause a prolonged QT as far as medications goes. Antiarrhythmias is one. We don't have you on in. So we did briefly, because you did initially come in with, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, so we had to do several rounds of epinephrine, but you ended up not needing an antiarrhythmia. Yep. Exactly, because of the way you came in. There was one point when you were in VFib, yeah. Yeah, just because of where you went. I've never had somebody come back from the nowhere without, raging infection and then usually some kind of initial cardiac event right before we pulled them out after the fight. Yep. I've seen people with brainstem damage too. They don't come back. Yeah. So you did good. You did really good. Yeah, it certainly can. Well, I've had a lot of people say, exactly. Well, so on the medical side of it, how about we finish the medical side first, and then afterwards you and I will have a drink of tea, and we can go through the existential crisis part of having just come back from the nowhere. I just want to make sure you understand the medical side that I'm doing, so that everything is okay, and I have your, now that you're awake, your consent for all the different treatments that we're doing on you. So we didn't have to do an antiarrhythmic except for the initial ROSC medications, right? But we did end up having to put you on some pretty high dose antipsychotics, specifically haloperidol, because you were kind of attacking everything and trying to kill it, all the things, as soon as we pulled you out back through the portal. So, and those can cause it. We've already discontinued those. I think that you're calm, and those are kind of getting washed out of your system. So no more haloperidol. That's something that can cause prolonged QT. Yep. The other, well, the other things that can cause it, you're not on. Phenothiazines, atypicals, lithium. You were on a long-term SSRI, right? No, we hadn't put you on one, right? That's right. We were going to have a depression visit about that. But you're not on one. Okay, or a TCA. We had talked about them for tinnitus, but you didn't end up getting on one. We'd also talked about them for headaches, that's right. Yeah, those can cause QT prolongation in some people, which is why we don't give them to older people. How is old defined? Well, there's a specific list called the Beers criteria. Yeah, we like to measure everything, and there's a specific list of medications called the Beers list that we don't like to give to people over 65. Yeah, exactly. Some people don't seem to know, but that's the correct way you're supposed to do it. You're not supposed to put older people on all these different things. Antimicrobials, I had to have you both on a quinolone and an azole. Well, and because you were already taking the prophylactic medication in there as you went in, and I think that probably saved your life to prevent some, yeah, that was the anti-malarial medication. Yeah. That was the doxycycline, yeah. Usually I would put you on something else, but because of the travel and the cost, and because it also protects against some other stuff, is why we did the doxy. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So, but macrolides, quinolones, azoles, pentamide, atovaquone, which is another anti-malarial, tenazanavir, which is an HIV drug. I don't pronounce a lot of these a lot of the time. I'll just write it down and give it to you. I haven't had to prescribe a lot of that, no. I did have a patient, I have had patients on, so for example, you might have a patient on a prophylactic because their partner is HIV positive, so they might be on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do, because of my history as a sexual assault medical forensic examiner. So I have a lot of experience in a lot of sexual health stuff. But don't worry, none of that is what you need right now. Just worried about your heart and your lungs and your little wound and your fractured. Yes, as you put it, those are your words, not mine. Fractured psyche are your words, not mine. You will be okay. You will be okay. Well, it's very... Yeah. We'll talk about the mission. Let's do the medicine first. Because I want to make sure we have all the orders in. I want to make sure that you're okay. I know. So, other things, antiemetics, which are anti-things that make you throw up, can actually do it. Alfuzosin, methadone, ranolazine, you're not on any of those. Electrolyte disturbances, so we took some labs trying to make sure of your electrolytes. Your magnesium was super low initially coming back out of there. It's kind of unusual. I don't know why people have that coming out of there. Potassium is okay though, but that can also cause it. Hyperkalemia is also associated with decreased, so hypokalemia. Excuse the things I'm saying. Calcium is not kalemia. Kalemia is potassium. Your potassium is fine. Your potassium is beautiful. Hypocalcemia, where you don't have enough calcium, can cause your QT to be prolonged, and too much calcium can cause it to be shrunk. Why? Well, calcium in your sarcoplasmic reticulum, in your muscle cells, and in your heart cells, it's via a different mechanism, via a troponin mechanism. But basically, calcium attaches to these little molecules and helps your muscles to fire, right? And the amount of calcium that's in your muscle cells and getting on those little molecules determines when your heart is going to fire. Yeah, a little more than here. Yeah. So if you have a lot of calcium, it's going to fire. Exactly right. No, you have it a little bit backwards. So, here, I'll show you in here. So, hypocalcemia is the one associated with a long QT. It makes sense because you don't have enough calcium to make all those things fire. Whereas lots of calcium, it's going to fire faster, so you're going to have a shorter QT. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, good. So, you are low on magnesium. That's mostly been corrected. We've given you several fluid boluses. That's the IV that's hanging here. So, I'm hoping by the next EKG, which we'll do in about an hour, your QT should be back to where it needs to be. Some of these other things, a stroke, CEA, which or if your neck is dissected, like cut open, some other things like that, that'll change the way that the sensors in your body work, can also change your QT. So, you don't have any of those. Have you ever heard of Takotsubo? It's a very unusual heart disease. It's called that because it was first identified in Japanese women. And it means octopus trap. It's because the heart looks like an octopus trap. If the heart begins to dilate, and it's when you have heart failure caused by sadness. Yeah, that's a real thing. You can be so sad that you mess up the autonomic regulators in your body. You mess up your chemicals. You mess up all the different chemicals that affect the heart, and it causes the muscle to dilate and flop out, and then your heart has trouble pumping, and then you're more sad, presumably. Yeah, it's called Takotsubo. Yeah, it's an interesting one. If you don't believe me, that is one that Dr. Google will give you plenty of information on. The mind is just another part of the body. It's all chemicals all through here, and those chemicals influence each other. Yeah. Yeah, so how you think does affect everything. Well, and that's where we pay attention to that. Anyone in your family have any kind of heart problem with a sodium channel problem or a potassium channel problem, anything else where they had arrhythmias all their life or anything like that? No? Okay, so you're not at increased risk. Alright. It is possible for somebody who's incredibly cold to have long QT. People who have a bundle branch block. What else is on my list here? Oh, bradycardia. And even coronary artery disease. Those things you don't have. Okay. So that's kind of the big thing that I'm worried about, is we're just bringing you back heart-wise. Okay. Your lungs, I'm gonna have to keep you. So I have you still on I had you on a respiratory fluoroquinolone. So I switched you to doxycycline instead, basically back to the one you were on, because it's going to be less QT prolonging. It's not as nice as the IV fluoroquinolone, but the IV the respiratory fluoroquinolone had already pretty much done its job. Yep. Can I do a little more listening with your lungs, and then we'll have a cup of tea and just kind of detox from everything? Yeah. You're my only patient of the day, so yeah, we'll just go back to chill mode. Okay. So what I'd like to do here in the back, I'm gonna go ahead and tap on your back a little bit here, okay? You just keep breathing nice and steady. Okay. So what I'm doing there is I'm listening to the spaces between your ribs to try to see if one sounds more dull and more full of stuff versus the other. Can you do me a favor? Can I have you say E? Okay. Again, E. Again. Okay, again. And again. 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 Yeah, so what I'm listening to there is I'm trying to see if it changes to an A sound to let me know that it's running over something. Yeah, like something that shouldn't be there. Okay, let me have you say 99. Okay. Alright. Alright. Yeah, so that's looking for what's called bronchophony. I'm trying to hear if you have a more bronchus sound or if you have like a reverberating sound. Yeah, I can show you that in this little book too. I can. It's okay. So, actually that might be too basic to show you in here. It's pretty basic. Pretty basic. Yeah, I think that's too basic. So basically, I'll try again to explain it instead of showing you, because I can't find a good website to show you. EasyAuscultation.com is great, but you can't hear it because my computer won't show it to you. But basically, when you say 99, it should sound like kind of, fuzzy and airy. If it sounds very, very airy versus sounding it might sound very, very tight and distinct and clear because there's, if the sounds are being transmitted real quickly, because there's a mass or something there, so it'll be very distinct and clear with that. Alrighty. One more thing, okay? Can you do me a favor? I need you to go ahead and whisper. Okay? And whisper anything. It doesn't matter. Okay. And then over here, just whisper, whisper, whisper. Yep, nice whispering. And over here. Okay. Alright. Keep breathing nice deep breaths. Nice deep breaths. Nice deep breaths. Very good. Okay. I'm just going to put my hands like this on your chest. I just want to watch. Rise and fall. Beautiful. Okay. Alright. Yeah. So I'm really happy your whole lung was consolidated before on that side, and it was really noisy and yucky. It's a lot less now. Okay. Yeah. So talk to me. What was it like being in the nowhere? I wouldn't call Cthulhu a god in that sense. I would call him in the same sense of Zeus and all those guys. If it can be killed. Yeah. I think that's a definition thing, right? Well, since you brought it up, Lewis always used to say that those were like kings and heroes. Kind of like, I bet you if an archaeologist were to dig up our comic book stores, they would think, Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, they were our gods. So, Tehillim 2 talks about that too. In the sense of, it's really in the sense of what some people would call lowercase g. That's different than the idea of, the Elohim over all of the universe, from whom all things come. That idea, the kind of very Jewish or Judeo-Christian idea of like the overbeing is very, very different from like the Cthulhu, the Zeus, those guys, where it's just like, it's a big, powerful dude. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, being in a crazy situation like you've been, it gets you thinking about those kind of things. That's okay. That's okay. I have a new tea to show you. Yeah. Just got this one. It's got a beautiful dragon case. Chinese dragon, the symbol of the formative force yang, belongs to the water element. What? Well, it's like, it is the yang of the water, but water is often, like in Taoism, considered yin. Yeah. I think didn't we read the Little of the Tao Te Ching together? Oh no, you read it with your fairy friend. That's right. That's right. In the aroma of the tea Chinese dragon, you can find the gaiety of a vast river and the calm of a boundless sea and the coolness of an autumn rain. This is a jasmine green, but I don't know if it's really from China. It's a Ceylon green tea. You can see Ceylon. This is the symbol here. You know what? You gotta protect your people. That's what it comes down to. That's our job. I'm having a little trouble opening it. We help. Oh, you're having trouble too. Would you mind? Is it okay if I use my mouth? Right. It doesn't want to open. Mouth notwithstanding. I should have brought my knife. Oh. It's a little bit of overkill, isn't it? But this is what we'll do. This will do. I know this is very sharp. There we go. That's perfect. It's beautiful. I think it's really sharp because I don't think it's been used in, centuries. I just wish I could fix this tang. Would you do that for me? Oh, if you could take it to her. You saw her just before your last mission, right? Yeah. The space lady. Oh, you're saying she wants to be called what? The curator now? Okay. Well, who am I to tell her what she needs to be called, I guess. I'm gonna take my hair down. Yep. Well, because doctor time is over. I'm happy with the progress we're making on you, and we'll take the next EKG in an hour. You like it? Oh, you can have it. Here. When I was in Paraguay, I saw the first time. Obviously, I've been many, many times. But the very first time I went, there was a little girl with a really lovely necklace. And she had so much less than me, but she saw that I liked it, and she instantly gave it to me. And I felt so bad, but also so honored and appreciative, that she would give me this necklace. And I said I would always remember her by it, and I did. I do. I still remember her. And I've gone back and seen her a couple times since. It's hard, though. It's not an easy life yeah. Well, that's why, world crisis notwithstanding, I'm still saving up for, a jungle clinic, an ambulatory clinic, basically, for people who don't have medical care there. Yeah. That's at patreon.com/becoming-hero. Yeah, it's something I still want to do very much. So. Oh, no, the secret agent email thing is in the description, actually. So that you can get the agency emails and the relaxation stuff, especially now that you've been on. Once you've fought Cthulhu once, everyone's got to go one round and then you're allowed to join. Yeah. Yep, you're welcome. Welcome to do that. Yep, so that's in the description. Of course. Well, we're just glad you're back okay. That's the main thing. I have these cute little things that I use to prepare the tea. Hold on, let me just reach around you here. So let me show you this little thing, this little cup. I got these in Korea on my deployment. Yep. Well, we love to mix the real and the imaginary, right? Look how beautiful these tea leaves are. These are really nice full tea leaves. I don't know if you can see. Can you see? Isn't that beautiful? That's green tea and jasmine. Two different things. It looks truly lovely. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to pour this cup for you. And just for you. Because since you have an infection, I won't be sharing your tea with you. But I'll just pour it for you. And we'll let it steep about 4 minutes. The water's about 175 degrees. For green tea, So that's for you. Yeah, of course. It's not a problem. I brought something else here for you. I figured it'll help you. It'll be boring enough that it'll just get you to sleep. Or it'll be interesting. Who knows? It'll at least be relaxing after all the existential dread. Let's back this back up. Well, and I know I keep bringing Lewis, but Lewis said that he became an atheist after he was convinced of the non-existence of the Greek gods. And as he came back, as he became essentially Tolkien is the one who converted him, not to Catholicism, which always disappointed Tolkien very much, because Tolkien wanted just a little history, philosophical and fantasy history for you, since, you know, Tolkien is in many ways the father of modern fantasy, despite some of the problems with his, you know, fiction. Package this all back up. So yeah, he wanted Lewis to become a Catholic, but Lewis ended up becoming an Anglican. Yes. Of course. Well, and so what he said is as he came back, he began to be open to a lot of mythology within its place, right? So he wasn't going to worship Zeus, he was going to worship his, you know, Elohim, overbeing God, not one of any of the quote-unquote lowercase g gods, but he began to believe in their existence and think, well, maybe historically they were based on someone. There's some evidence that the old Hindu gods were originally based on like real princes and people, and like people who, you know, actually existed, and that those people, you know, grew on to become very important sources of pretty important stories. So basically he stopped assuming that other people's beliefs were mythology and started finding some of the truth in them, even if he couldn't agree with them 100%. Obviously he wouldn't convert to Hinduism, he wouldn't be a Greek pantheist, and so he would differ with those people, right? But he was more open to listening to those belief systems once he moved away from atheism, actually, which is interesting, because for a lot of people, I think it's the opposite. So, but for him, he was more open at that point. And he saw all these beings as being representations of something real, maybe not literally real, in the sense that his, you know, Elohim, his God, he believed was real, or maybe in a different sense, right? So like his God being the overbeing and all these other beings being historical beings or angels, fairies, things that may have existed and maybe once existed to serve or still exist to serve his overbeing, but in some ways have been twisted, or because anything when you begin to worship it becomes twisted, he would have said. Well, like money. I think that's the best example. Not to be like in your face and fast with that answer, but yeah. Basically everything is beautiful in its place was his idea. Everything is beautiful in its place, and everything is beautiful where it belongs. The problem is when you worship it, instead of worshiping the one thing that should be worshipped. That was his way of thinking about it. Of course, and you're gonna have your own, you know, way of thinking. I'm always gonna take care of you no matter what. Of course. Well, let me read you to sleep. Just because I think it's gonna be a little tough for you to get to sleep after what happened. This is an interesting little piece, very short, about where is it? Not about beauty. That's a beautiful one. I'll read that one. I'll let you guess who wrote this piece. It's an interesting little piece. You might not agree with everything in it. I should read the whole thing or just part of it? It's interesting from a historical perspective. This is written in like the 1920s, right around time of war, which is interesting considering our world also in crisis, the philosophical implications that he has here. I think here. To admit that we can retain our interest in learning under the shadow of these eternal issues, but not under the shadow of a European war. He's talking about World War II. Would be to admit that our ears are closed to the voice of reason, very open to the voice of our nerves and our mass emotions. I think that's the wrong time to start it, but I will continue anyway. I think it important to try to see the present calamity in true perspective. The war creates no absolutely new situation. It simply aggravates the permanent human situation so that we can no longer ignore it. Human life has always been lived on the edge of a precipice. Human culture has always had to exist under the shadow of something infinitely more important than itself. If men had postponed the search for knowledge and beauty until they were secure, the search would never have begun. We are mistaken when we compare war to our normal life. Life has never been normal. Even those periods that we think most tranquil, like the 19th century, that's his perspective of his century, turn out on closer inspection to be full of crises, alarms, difficulties, emergencies. Sorry, no, he's not 19th century. He is 20th century. Plausible reasons have never been lacking for putting off all merely cultural activities until some imminent danger has been averted or some crying injustice put right. But humanity long ago chose to neglect those plausible reasons. They want knowledge and beauty now and would not wait for the suitable moment that never comes. Periclean Athens leaves us not only the Parthenon, but significantly the funeral oration. The insects have chosen a different line. They have sought first the material welfare and security of the hive, and presumably they have their reward. Men are different. They propound mathematical theorems in beleaguered cities, conduct metaphysical arguments in condemned cells, make jokes on scaffolds, discuss the last new poem while advancing to the walls of Quebec, and comb their hair at Thermopylae. This is not panache. It is our nature. But since we are fallen creatures, the fact that this is now our nature would not by itself prove that it is rational or right. We have to inquire whether there really is any legitimate place for the activities of the scholar in a world such as this, meaning a world in crisis, right? That is, we have always to answer the question, how can you be so frivolous and selfish as to think of anything but the salvation of human souls? And we have at that moment to answer the additional question. At this moment, to answer the additional question, how can you be so frivolous and selfish as to think of anything but the war? Now, part of our answer will be the same for both questions. The one implies that our life can and ought to become exclusively and explicitly religious, the other that it can and ought to become exclusively national. And don't worry, he doesn't go easy route on this. I believe that our whole life can and indeed must become religious in a sense to be explained later. But if it was meant to be that all of our activities are to be of the kind that can be recognized as sacred as opposed to secular, then I would give a single reply to both my imaginary assailants. I would say, whether it ought to happen or not, the thing you are recommending is not going to happen. Before I became, and this person is a Christian, before I became a Christian, I do not think I fully realized that one's life after conversion would inevitably consist in doing most of the same things one had been doing before. One hopes in a new spirit, but still the same things. Before I went to the last war, I certainly expected that my life in all the trenches would, in some mysterious sense, be all war. But in fact, I found that the nearer you got to the front line, the less everyone spoke and thought of the Allied cause and the progress of the campaigns. And I am pleased to find that Tolstoy, in the greatest war book ever written, records the same thing. And so, in its own way, does the Iliad. Neither conversion nor enlistment in the army is really going to obliterate our human life. Christians and soldiers are still men. He uses very strong language here. The infidel's idea of a religious life and the civilian's idea of active service are fantastic. If you attempted in either case to suspend your participate in this war. And every duty is a religious duty, and our obligation to perform every duty is therefore absolute. Thus we may have a duty to rescue a drowning man, and perhaps if we live on a dangerous coast, to learn life-saving so as to be ready for any drowning man when he turns up. It may be our duty to lose our own lives in saving him, but if anyone devoted to life-saving in the sense of giving it his total attention, so that he thought and spoke of nothing else and demanded the cessation of all other human activities until everyone had learned to swim, well, he would be a monomaniac. The rescue of drowning men is then a duty worth dying for, but not worth living for. It seems to me that all political duties, among which I include military duties, are of this kind. A man may have to die for his country, but no man must in any exclusive sense live for his country. He who surrenders himself without reservation to the temporal claims of a nation, or a party, or a class, is rendering to Caesar that which of all things most emphatically belongs to God himself. It is for a very different reason that religion cannot occupy the whole of life in the sense of excluding all our other natural activities. For of course, in some sense, it must occupy the whole of life. There is no question of a compromise between the claims of God and claims of culture or politics or anything else. God's claim is infinite and inexorable. You can refuse it or you can begin to try to grant it. There is no middle way. Yet in spite of this, it is clear that Christianity does not exclude any of the ordinary human activities. St. Paul tells people to get on with their jobs. He even assumes that Christians may go to dinner parties, and what is more, dinner parties given by pagans, and he uses pagans in the sense that modern pagans use it as an actual religious statement. Words were a little different in this time period, and he doesn't use it in the sense that you've seen in the movies, where it's like, oh, you heathen pagans, and burn the infidel, and whatever. Infidel means, like, not of the faith, is what it means in that language. And pagan specifically means, like, Wiccan pagan, like that belief system. You know, a lot of the, basically worship of the older gods. And so he's saying, so that's what he's saying. He's saying, not like, he's talking basically living the opposite of the way some people are, where they're gonna, if they're of one belief system, they won't associate with people of other belief system. He is talking about, people going to dinner parties given by the worshippers of various temples and Zeus and so forth. So he even assumes that Christians may go to dinner parties, and what is more, dinner parties given by pagans. Our Lord attends a wedding and provides miraculous wine under the aegis of his church, and in the most Christian ages, learning and the arts flourish. The solution of this paradox is, of course, well known to you. Whether you eat or drink or whatsoever ye do, do it all to the glory of God. All our merely natural activities will be accepted if they are offered to God, even the humblest, and all of them, even the noblest, will be sinful if they are not. Christianity does not simply replace our natural life and substitute a new one. It is rather a new organization which exploits to its own supernatural ends these natural materials. No doubt in a given situation it demands the surrender of some or of all, merely human pursuits. It is better to be saved with one eye than having two to be cast into Gehenna. But it does this in a sense per accidens, because in those special circumstances it has ceased to be possible to practice this or that activity to the glory of God. There is no essential quarrel between the spiritual life and human activities as such. Thus the omnipresence of obedience to God in a Christian's life is in a way analogous to the omnipresence of God in space. God does not fill space as a body fills it, in the sense that parts of him are in different parts of space, excluding other objects from them. Yet he is everywhere, totally present, at every point of space, according to good theologians. We are now in a position to answer the view that human culture is an inexcusable frivolity on the part of creatures loaded with such awful responsibilities as we. I reject at once the idea which lingers in the minds of some modern people that cultural activities are in their own right spiritual and meritorious, as though scholars and poets were intrinsically more pleasing to God than scavengers and bootblacks. I think it was Matthew Arnold who first used the English word spiritual in the sense of the German geistlich, and so inaugurated this most dangerous and most anti-Christian error. Let us clear it forever from our minds. The work of a Beethoven and the work of a charwoman become spiritual on precisely the same condition, that of being offered to God. I think a charwoman is a chimney sweep, but I don't know, of being done humbly as to the Lord. This does not, of course, mean that it is for anyone a mere toss-up whether he should sweep rooms or compose symphonies. A mole must take to the glory of God, and a cock must crow. We are members of one body, but differentiated members, each with his own vocation. A man's upbringing, his talents, his circumstances are usually a tolerable index of his vocation. If our parents have sent us to Oxford, if our country allows us to remain there, this is prima facie evidence that the life which we, at any rate, can best lead to the glory of God at present is the learned life. So, I mean the pursuit of knowledge and beauty in a sense for their own sake, but in a sense which does not exclude their being for God's sake. An appetite for these things, for beauty and truth, exists in science, exists in the human mind, and God makes no appetite in vain. We can therefore pursue knowledge as such and beauty as such in the sure confidence that by so doing we are either advancing to the vision of God ourselves or indirectly helping others to do so. Humility, no less than the appetite, encourages us to concentrate simply on the knowledge or the beauty, and not too much concerning ourselves with their ultimate relevance to the vision of God. I don't know if I agree with him there. That's very interesting, though. He goes on to talk about things that make it difficult to live during a world crisis. Talking about the 3 mental exercises which serve, oh honey, your little face there, which may serve as defenses against the 3 enemies which war raises up against the scholar. He talks about excitement, the tendency to think and feel about the war when we're supposed to be working on our work, and not obsessing over the current crisis. The second enemy is frustration. And then the third is fear. And this is the section I really wanted to read. I should have just skipped here and read this. War threatens us with death and pain. No man, and especially no Christian who remembers Gethsemane, need try to attain a stoic indifference about these things. We can guard against illusions of the imagination. We think of the streets of Warsaw and contrast the deaths there suffered with an abstraction we call life. But there is no question of death or life for any of us, only a question of this death or that, of a machine gun bullet now or a cancer 40 years later. What does war do to death? It certainly does not make it more frequent. 100% of us die, and that percentage cannot be increased. It puts several deaths earlier, but I hardly suppose that is what we fear. Certainly when the moment comes, it will make a little difference how many years we have behind us. Does it increase our chances of a painful death? I doubt it. As far as I can find out, what we call natural death is usually preceded by suffering, and a battlefield is one of the very few places where one has a reasonable prospect of dying with no pain at all. Does it decrease our chances of dying at peace with God? I cannot believe it. If active service does not persuade a man to prepare for death, what conceivable concatenation of circumstances would? Yet war does do something to death. It forces us to remember it. The only reason why the cancer at 60 or the paralysis at 75 do not bother us is that we forget them. War makes death real to us, and that would have been regarded as one of its blessings by most of the great Christians of the past. They thought it good for us to be always aware of our mortality. I am inclined to think they are right. All the animal life in us, all schemes of happiness that centered in this world, were always doomed to a final frustration. In ordinary times, only a wise man can realize it. Now the stupidest of us knows. We see unmistakably the sort of universe in which we have all along been living, and must come to terms with it. If we had foolish, unchristian hopes about human culture, they are now shattered. If we thought we were building up to a heaven on earth, if we looked for something that would turn the present world from a place of pilgrimage into a permanent city satisfying the soul of man, we are disillusioned, not a moment too soon. But if we thought that for some souls and at some times, the life of learning humbly offered to God was in its own small way one of the appointed approaches to the divine reality and the divine beauty which we hope to enjoy hereafter, we can think so still. So the last part, I think, is probably the only part I should have read to you. But basically the idea that right now, it's very, very practical, right? The crisis, depending on what you are able to control, which unless you are very, very high up, is likely not very much. It's likely, in our crisis, wearing a mask, not touching other people too much, keeping your distance, using your best judgment, right? There's very little, ultimately, that you can control. You're going to die one day. It could be tomorrow of a horrible virus. It could be you get shot in a mugging. It could be much, much later. We are all going to die at some point in time. So the question is, rather than focusing on that, focusing on the greater things in life, because in the end, what does it do? What he says, what is the crisis doing? What is the war doing? It's reminding us that we are temporary. That reminder is not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, human suffering, we all, especially a physician, I want to end a certain measure of human suffering. But being a physician, every single person I help, every life I've ever saved, they're all going to die one day. It's just running on a treadmill. So the question is, what are we doing to make the life that we do have more beautiful and valuable for those around us in their temporary time, right? Because it's not just about expanding life, it's about how are we making this more beautiful and valuable, and more importantly, what about the next one? Or what about the bigger cosmic things, which, you having experienced what you've experienced, it causes you to think and question, and you may come to different conclusions than me. But those thinkings and questionings are not bad things. It's not bad to see that the universe is big, and that there's a lot more going on here than just, our little species. That's not a bad thing. Because we're all going to die. So the question is, what are we doing with the time we do have? And what are we doing with the possibility of a time afterwards? That's what it's about. Oh yes, things can get a lot more philosophical. I'm surprised you're still awake. It's okay. We don't have to. And I'm allowed to be wrong, and you're allowed to be wrong, and we're all allowed to be wrong. It's okay. My main hope is that you just feel a little better. And rest. Just rest. It's okay to struggle and feel bad for a little bit. But it's also okay to enjoy beautiful things, to enjoy bright colors, to enjoy little details, and recognize that they are beautiful. It is okay. The point of me reading you that is, it is okay to enjoy knowledge and beauty in a crisis. You do what you can to help out, and then beyond that, enjoy what you can, and it's okay to let yourself suffer a little bit, but you don't keep. It's difficult because it depends on where you are. There's moments in time where we shy away from suffering when we should be diving headlong into it. And then there are other moments in time where we make ourselves suffer for no reason. And only you, not me, not anyone else, know where you should be. You and the divine. Oh, yes, of course. I mean, I'm not Anglican. But I think that he makes some interesting and good points. Of course. Well, you've heard my stuff. I still hold to the Torah and things like that. But I think that there is, we'll talk more. We'll talk more about these things, if you like. For now, rest your head. It's okay to think and wonder and explore, not just on an academic level, but a personal, spiritual level, to find out, is there really, what's going on? What's the solution? To explore all those things. But at some level, there's an illogicalness to fear, because, we're all gonna die. So what are you gonna do about it? It's not different. It doesn't need to be more now than before. And he talks also about the importance of focusing on your work and letting that carry you through. You focus on your work and do the next thing. Because always constantly thinking about the crisis isn't going to help you. Although you can use it to help you by letting it cause you to think about things that are bigger and more meaningful. deeper stuff about, hey, what is the deal with human mortality? We are all going to die. So how does that affect how you live your life? Exactly. Or does it? Yeah. Well, you know me. Yeah. Yes, I think after dealing with Cthulhu, I would still continue to believe my 2,000-year-old Jewish zombie messiah is necessary to save me from the things that I have done that mar the universe and put it at harm and put its different spiritual, metaphysical laws out of whack, and that, if I'm not saved from that consequence, the natural consequence, like gravity, like when you jump off a cliff, that I need somebody to come in and save me from that. That doesn't mean that I cannot afterwards, after being saved, therefore learn how to fly. It's alright, you don't have to understand it, and you don't have to agree with me because you are going to sleep. You are allowed to be you, my dear. You are right. On some level, these disagreements matter so much because my way of looking at the world could threaten your way of looking at the world if those two realities require action, which they do, right? Mine requires a certain amount of action that requires to try to save as many people as possible, right? But at the same time, I think that we as humans hopefully have learned to engage in these battles in our minds instead of on, nasty Twitter forums or, God forbid, on the battlefield, right? Like, I think that we are able to use our mental prowess with each other instead of, I hate you, and engage on a spiritual level with each other as we learn and grow and expand and feel, so that we are both improved. Even if our worldviews might be, a danger to each other, I don't think